Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Reeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome today to our lovely guest, Chris Gray. Hi Chris.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so Chris Gray is a textile artist, author and tutor living in South Wales. Much of her work is inspired by all things ancient and the textiles and arts of tribal peoples. Having studied religion and history and then European prehistory at the University of Wales, a fascination for ancient societies and cultures has been a constant in her life. Shelves groan with books about Neolithic sites, Minoan goddess shrines and ancient scripts and languages. Others with those about quilting and embroidery. Boxes of fabrics and fibres are stacked from floor to ceiling. Chris can be found at many of the major shows, travelling around the UK and Europe, giving talks and workshops, and she is a regular contributor to the Embroiderers Guild Stitch magazine. Chris runs Maybon Arts, a small online site, shop and publishing business, and we can find that at www.maybonarts.co.uk. And her first book, Stitching Magic, Beginning the Journey, was published in November 2013. Chris's blog, The Textile Butterfly, is a popular stopping off point for many visitors. And I will include both of those links in the show episode, and plus any other links that Chris wants me to include as well. So there we are, Chris. That's you in a nutshell. Thank you.
Probably nut and shell are good terms.
So before we get started with the nut and the shell bit then, your stitchery story, would you like to share with us what you are working on and what has got you excited, please?
Oh, I'm currently working on a number of projects, which is quite normal. As I've said, I'm definitely a textile butterfly and I need to flit from one piece to another. I have several pieces on the go at any given time. I get so far with one, and then usually I'm waiting for paint or glue to dry or something, and I'll pop off and do something else. I'll do a bit on the sewing machine, and then my neck hurts, and then I'll go back to do some hand stitching. So I swap and change and end up with many things on the go, and then all of a sudden they all come together and everything's finished. And I'm trying at the minute to work on a number of themes, but I'm trying to make stuff that isn't flat. I've done a lot of stuff in the past that sits on a wall, and we run out of wall space.
Yes.
And it gets a bit boring after a while. So I've started to work themes now on moths and mushrooms, because I want them to be a bit different. And I've had some on my stand at the shows this year.
Yes.
And my poor moth, he came off the wall so many times because people wanted to stroke him. I do the stitching and that on the wings. Yes. And then I put this really delicious long-haired fur fabric on the body, and everyone just wants to touch it and stroke it. So my moths are becoming rather strange and weird, but that suits my personality quite well, I think.
So we've got moths and mushrooms.
Mushrooms, yes.
Yeah. And how does that fit in with the idea of the ancient themes, or is it just a departure so that you can create something 3D and you fancied moths and mushrooms?
Yes, I want 3D. So I'm working on things that will stand alone or at least stand out from a wall. And then I use the wings and the mushroom caps as a canvas for whatever subject I want to stitch. So you can get all sorts of stuff. They just happen to be on wings or mushroom caps.
Right. Oh, well, that is definitely a novel idea. Excellent. I know the picture, you've sent me some other pictures, so I'll have to go and have a look at some of these interesting mushrooms and moths. Sounds
yeah.
good.
If you look at the pictures for the photos I took of my stand at the shows, you'll see them on the wall in there, and I'll be posting some in the next couple of months as I'm working on them anyway. Then they'll be on my blog, so people can have a good look around at what I'm doing.
Brilliant. And I do have to say at this point in time, I really like your blog. You keep it up to date. It's nice and bright and colourful. We can see what you're doing. It's really great. Yeah, well done on that. Because I know it can be a bit of a pain keeping things like that up to date, but it's really super what you've done on there, Chris.
My blog is where I communicate with the world, and I enjoy doing it. It's not a chore. And my mission is to get everybody creating. So if I put everything that I'm doing on there, I get emails and messages from people saying, "You've really inspired me. I'm going to have a go."
Brilliant.
And I think, yes, that's another one.
Right. That's really great. And you hit the nail on the head there. It has to be something you enjoy. And if you enjoy doing it, then you will actually go ahead do it. And I think that's the same no matter what the subject is. My main thing is podcasting in general, and I write blog posts on podcasting, but I do actually think, yes, I enjoy doing that, and I write blog posts for other businesses as well. But if you don't like the writing or posting your pictures and so on, it's never going to happen, is it? So I think to have that attitude of, I enjoy doing this, it's my window to the world, it works out really well in that case.
It does indeed.
Brilliant. And I can tell that you are excited about helping people and all of the creativity that you've got going as well. How did you first get interested in embroidery and textile art, Chris? And maybe who taught you, and what did you do to get started?
Every woman in my family was a stitcher. They knitted, they crocheted, they did quilting, and they did embroidery. Most of it was for sales of work for the chapel. And I remember at the harvest, sort of autumn time, when you had a sale of work, everywhere in the house, every surface was covered in those dolls with those dresses that you put a loo roll underneath.
Yes, those.
And if it wasn't those, it was the frilly tea cozies that in the two colours.
Yes.
And then it was tray cloths with the ladies with the crinoline dresses.
Yes.
All sorts of bits. And when this happened around me from as far back as I can remember. And I was a pain, because if they didn't give me to do what they were doing, they couldn't do what they were doing. And they didn't really mind, because I was the very youngest in the family. Both my parents were the youngest in their families.
Right, yes.
My mother's oldest brother was 21 years older than her.
Crikey.
So all my cousins were old enough almost to be my parent. And then I was the baby of the family, and everybody indulged me. So they gave me to do whatever they were doing. They sat and showed me how to do it. And if I wasn't with a needle or a crochet hook, I was down in the shed they gave me my own little set, of hammers and bits and bobs. And I'm quite happy even now. If I'm not stitching, then I've got wood carving tools in my hands as well. And I've got drills and soldering irons. And if my husband needs anything, he says, "Chris, have you got?" Because I've probably got more tools to hand than he does.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it is so nice though, isn't it, to come from that background of being surrounded by people making and doing. My guest last week, Shirley Smith, she said the same sort of thing. We've had quite a few guests the same. And I do remember the toilet roll thingies. I do actually have this pile of old transfers from, I think it's like Good Needleworker Woman from 1930s that the old lady next door from me gave me. And lots of those were patterns for little towels and tray cloths. And there's a couple of crinoline lady things in there, and those little cottages and so on. And I used to find them fascinating. And when I was a student, I dug two of these out that were like A4 size, the size of a magazine. cottage garden ones, and actually embroidered those with all the traditional stitches, very, very traditionally. And I've still got those framed now. I love them, and everybody always says, "Oh, they're so pretty, those. They're so colourful." So, well, it was just something I did as a student. But yeah, they're almost trendy again now. They've been on the go that long.
They are.
So, moving on from your family being creative, then what would you say your major inspirations have been as you've developed your creativity and your art?
It's always been something that is old. I am utterly fascinated by periods of time where we cannot really know what on earth that was for. And I mean, when I left school, I did City and Guilds in fashion and embroidery. Then I did the work thing. Then I did the motherhood thing. And then in my 30s, I went back to university. And that's when I went to the University of Wales.
Right.
And it was time where I had the luxury of being able to go and do just what I wanted to do. It wasn't so that I could get a job or anything. I just was utterly fascinated, and it was the right time for me to do it. And then my studies finished at AD 410, basically when the Romans left. And anything that had happened after that, I had not a clue about anything.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years ago, we were out and about, and as it does, a book falls off of a shelf when you're somewhere, and it sparks an interest, and it puts your little feet on another path. And this is where I got into the Romanesque 12th century stuff. And it has really, utterly, completely gripped me. And it particularly the 12th century. My stand this year has been entitled Medieval Mysteries. Right. It's included a lot of stitched pieces of printed floor tiles. And I have this thing about beakheads.
Right.
And they are weird stuff that happen around the doorways of Romanesque churches. They were only carved between 1120 and 1180. So it's a very tight period of time. And I want to do them in stitch.
Right. And are they shapes of are they like a head with a beak, or is that just a general name, or is it just strange carvings, or is there anything we can look and go, ooh, that's a beakhead?
Well, they're not gargoyles. Yeah. They're different. So the sort of weird looking guy with his finger up his nostril is a gargoyle. The beakheads often look like they've got the head of a cat and the beak of a bird. And the beak is going around one of the rolls that go around the doorway.
Right.
We know they would have been painted because one of the churches in Yorkshire, they unusually have them on the chancel arch on the inside.
Yeah.
And they haven't been weathered as much. And when they did some work on them, they found red ochre paint in the grooves. So they would have been brightly coloured, and I think they probably were around the door to remind people going in that if you were a naughty girl or boy, they would come and bite you.
They'd get you. Yeah.
They would get you. And when I was up in Northumberland this summer teaching at Wooler with the Embroiderers Guild up there, we went to Brinkburn Priory.
Yeah.
And I found some around the doorway, and the first time ever I found a couple that actually were eating people. And I thought, yes. I think it proves the point.
Yes.
But I started to try and do them in stitch, and they are very dimensional.
Yes.
And everything I did just looked so flat. And we were having some work done in the house, and one of the guys was putting in a door frame, and he came into the living room with this gun thing with expanding foam.
Oh, yes.
Well, it wasn't in his hand for long.
No.
I said, give us that. And within 15 minutes, I had squirted out a dozen beakhead shapes.
Right.
I let them dry, and then I carved them with a Stanley knife, and then covered them in paper mache and bits of cloth and paint and whatnot. And they now go up on my stand.
And they're nice and light as well, with it being the expanding
Absolutely.
foam.
And you can make any shape you want to. It's
Fantastic.
marvelous. I keep saying to my students, every embroidery person needs to have a B&Q loyalty card, because you can get stuff in B&Q that you can do absolute wonders with. So, if you like us, you get a diamond geezer card. And if you go on a Wednesday, you get 20% off or something. But, you can get marvelous stuff there. So go and have a go.
Well, there we are. So I think that's the first person who's been inspired by expanding foam.
It's got to be a first
to recreate medieval beakheads. That's just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the diversity of the people who I speak to. It's really, I find this as entertaining as something to do as you could ever imagine. It's very,
yes.
Right then, so we've been looking at your inspirations. What about your favourite techniques then, other than the expanding foam?
I'm a hand stitcher.
Right.
I do use a machine more than I used to, because since I had my new faff machine, I'm just at one with it. But I like working small. I've tried doing bigger pieces, and I find it really, really difficult. So although I'm doing big pieces, they're all made up of like 4-inch tile pieces.
Right.
So although one that I'm working on will end up being about 8 by 6 feet, it's made up of 4x4 tile pieces, so I can work each one small.
Yeah.
It just suits me. I like sitting in the corner of my sofa there with my feet up on the puff, and I have my sewing basket by the side of me, and I'm as happy as Larry, doing tiny little seed stitches all over the place.
Yeah.
And although people generally consider me to be a contemporary embroiderer, I have actually done all the other stuff as well. And because of the interest in the 12th century, I'm actually revisiting the Opus Anglicanum and Anglo-Saxon Crewel work.
Right.
Because I want to put myself physically back in that period when I'm working, and then I can use bits of that along with, I do tapestry weaving as well. And people have been tapestry weaving since there have been people, I think. So I can use all the bits and pieces and every technique that I can in what I'm doing, because although I may use a traditional technique like a split stitch or something like that, I don't tend to use it in the traditional way.
Yes, and I think that's the beauty about a lot of these stitches, isn't it? That they can be used in that traditional format, but you can also kind of go nuts with them as well, and change them and adapt them, and do all sorts of other interesting things with them as well. So good that you mentioned about the Opus Anglicanum. My first guest, Alison Larkin, who's one of my embroidery friends from the Hull branch, she's recreated a piece relatively recently, and that's really nice, with a dragon. I forgot now, but some saint lady and a dragon that came out of her stomach, or it ate her when she came out of its stomach. One of those sorts. So that was really interesting when I was talking to her about that as well. So it's just those extremes, as you say, you're getting yourself into that period. So that was the kind of work that was done then, but then to interpret it and extend it and do modern things with it, I think is great as well. And I think the images that you've sent me were the tiles that you've been working on.
Yeah, I've done some of the Opus Anglicanum stuff. Again, going back to the three-dimensional stuff I was saying earlier. Been doing moths and mushrooms, and the other thing I've done is mice.
Right.
I had people run to my stand in Birmingham because I blogged them so far, but didn't show them what they were like when they were finished. And they are medieval church mice, but they're far from poor. And I did. They look like little medieval bishops, although they're supposed to be female. But I'm doing all this fancy embroidery on their clothing.
Right.
Which is where it would have been because, of
Yes.
course, all the Opus Anglicanum we have are church vestments.
Pieces of church work. Yes, that's right.
So
And
we
what
have,
I was going to say, and what a sneaky thing to do, to blog about it so far, but not show the
yes,
finished subjects, that people were dying then to come and have a look. Nosiness
correct.
overcame them.
Yes. And they run up to the stand and say, where are they? Where are they? Who? The mice! And they stood there, all three of them, just looking demurely at people. And people took so many photos of them. They loved them.
Brilliant. So there we are. Sneaky marketing tip there from Chris.
Absolutely.
Only blog half of what you do and get people to come and see the finished item. Brilliant.
Yes.
Right. So what would you say then? Obviously, you've had all this experience and generate so much excitement. What would you say has been the high point of your textile art and embroidery career so far, Chris?
It was when I actually took the plunge into self-employment doing embroidery.
Right.
I'd been in teaching,
Yeah.
and I had enough, quite honestly. Came out, I went through a period of being a bit down in the dumps, I suppose. And then in 2010, I decided I would go into self-employment. And then just before I launched myself, my husband was diagnosed with lymphoma. And I thought, and I sat there and I thought, and I said to him, look, please don't take this the wrong way.
Yeah.
But if I don't start now, if anything happens to you, I won't start.
Yes. Yes.
And if I start now and anything happens, I'll probably stop for a while, but I'm more likely to pick up again.
Yes.
Because I'm a sort of person, I need something to work towards.
Yes, that's very true, yes.
You know, we had sort of 6 to 12 months of a really not very nice time with it all, but he came through it. He's clear, he's out of the woods and everything is fine. So my first Festival of Quilts was booked for 2011. So he could come with me because he wasn't in school at the time. It cost an arm and a leg for the stand. And I didn't sleep for about 4 or 5 nights thinking, oh, what have I done?
What have I done?
What have I done? What have I done? And I worked like stink. I dyed threads. I bottled bits of stuff to sell, and I put all my embroidery up on the wall, and it looked like a sweetie shop. Everybody loved it.
Good.
And because when you're on the stand, you can't eat, because as soon as you do, a bus trip turns up.
Yes.
And,
Speaking to people, that always happens. You're crossing your legs as well because you can't leave to go to the toilet.
Yeah. So I got myself a sandwich and I went 2 aisles along and stood in the middle of the aisle thinking I was quite safe to eat my ham and salad sandwich. This woman came around, looked at my badge and said, I want a word with you. And all I could go was, because I had a mouthful of food. And that was my meeting with Kathy Troop.
Right.
And she said, I want you to do a couple of articles for the Stitch magazine.
Yeah, fantastic.
And the first one on the tribal cloth was published the following year. And I've never looked back, because I've done, I think it's about 13 or 14 altogether.
Yeah.
Plus for another couple of magazines and that as well. And it's just rolled on, and one thing has led to another, Somebody found my name in one of the magazines. I had a phone call and she said, I'd like you to teach on one of my ships. And I thought, is this a joke now? So I did teaching on cruise ships for a couple of years. I don't do that anymore. I didn't like being away for a month, away from my man the last time. And I almost feel now that I've been there, I've done that.
Yes.
Now's the time to settle. I've got other things that I want to do.
There's other adventures to be had.
There are, and I can find them at home. I don't need to be in the South China Sea to find anything that inspires me. I go to Herefordshire.
And I don't suppose there's any beakheads in the South China Sea either.
No, but there's lots of other interesting
things. I know I'm going to say, we'll go on a detour at that point.
Yeah.
Stop it, Susan. Let's get back on. Oh dear, that's brilliant. So you've been in Stitch magazine, and in your bio there you mentioned about your book. So you've got a book on the go as well that you're doing.
That was done in 2013.
Yes.
And I called it Beginning the Journey.
Yes, good
because I knew that there were more coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on another 2 at the minute.
Yeah.
Which one will get done first, I don't know, because I get so far and then somebody says, can you do such and such?
Mm-hmm.
When Kathy was editor of Stitch, I would be up to my eyes in the middle of something and I would get a phone call, and it wouldn't be, hello, Chris, how are you today? It would be a voice at the end of the phone saying, I'm in the SH1T. I need an article, and can you do it by the end of the week, please? And although I don't get that now because Kathy's not the editor of Stitch anymore, I still get other people saying, can you come and do this? Can you come and do that?
Yes.
And it's a constant adventure.
Yes.
And things will get done when they get done. But now that my husband's retired, he is computer geek man.
Right.
So I should be able to do the writing. He can do the layout. We're sorting out a video desk in the annex over there so that I can do online tutorials and courses and videos and all sorts of stuff. And we'll see where all that goes.
Well, that's always a good adventure as well. And I've spoken to a few people who've ventured into online tutorials and so on. It is definitely something that helps you. You don't have to be travelling all the time. You can leverage your time a lot better. Again, I'm Mrs. Online Marketing Woman, aren't I? So
yes,
videos and online courses, fantastic. Good one, Chris. Yeah,
absolutely.
And now you guest on a podcast as well, so you'll have to find some more podcasts too.
I will have to, won't I?
So from the high points, do you have any stories for us? We usually have a bit of a titter over this one about anything that possibly didn't go quite as planned, and what did you learn from that experience? I don't like to always call them disasters, but there's usually something amusing that most people can pull out the bag for to share with us.
Absolutely. Again, it was to do with Stitch magazine. We'd been over to Alsace for a holiday, and I just love the houses. And I had done a number of Stitch patterns, and I photographed this lovely pub, bar, hotel, whatever it was in Colmar, and talking to Kathy on the phone, and she said, oh, how about a project then? And I said, okay. She said, but it needs to be something that's useful, not something that is purely decorative. So we decided to do it as a doorstop. The actual piece wouldn't have stopped any door because it was only stuffed with polyester fibre film. But they didn't know that in the magazine. That was okay. But it was very heavily embroidered. And I had done all the machine stitching for, think of the wooden lines that you get on medieval buildings. And I could see that it was pulling a bit. And, you think, that'll be fine, I'll iron it, it'll be fine. And I'd done all the pieces, so front, backs and sides. And then when I tried to iron them, I couldn't iron them out. And they looked like a piece of smocking.
No.
Like I'd used shearing elastic in the bobbin, and it didn't matter what I did, it wasn't happening.
It shriveled, and that was that.
I mean, thousands of French knots for all the geraniums in the flower boxes. And I had to send it the day after tomorrow. So I was up until goodness knows what time, redoing with the right kind of stabiliser on the back of the fabric, and it did get sent off in time. But that's the last time that I ever left anything that late. Because I didn't like the feeling at all. You think, oh, good grief, what have I done to myself? And I didn't want to let her down either, because magazines have deadlines.
Yes, that's right.
But that's why she always rang me if she needed anything, because she knew I wouldn't let her down.
Yeah.
But no, nothing gets left until the last minute. No, nothing.
That was the last time. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's that horrifying panic when your jaw drops and you're just kind of looking.
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't believe this has happened.
And it has, yeah.
So the Stabiliser is a definite every time.
Absolutely. For that kind of work, Stabiliser is it.
Yeah, it is. And
yes.
Sometimes it's very tempting, isn't it, to just think, oh, I'm just going to start. I just want to start. I don't want to faff about with all that preparation and all the rest of it. But it turns around and bites you every time. You do have to stop, do it properly from the start, and then it's really nice when you've put all those hours in. It's lovely, instead of going, oh, I wish I'd done the Stabiliser or the drawing out or whatever it was, stretching it, whatever. Yeah.
Yes, we learn the hard way, unfortunately.
Well, that's very true, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, so we've just touched on that point in terms of deadlines, and I know you've been full of things that you're already doing, and before we started recording we were chatting and you've already got quite a full diary. So have you ever heard of that saying, Chris, of beware of long distant elephants? So it's those things that seem so very far away when you agree to do them, and they creep up and suddenly there we are, they're due next week. So how do you manage to keep track of all of these different projects, given that you've got plenty on the go as well, but keep yourself organised and keep those creativity juices flowing as well, Chris?
I am very, very organised with what I have to do. I have my diary, I have my bookings, I know what needs to be done in order, and I work on several of them at one time, but I make sure that the one that needs to be finished first is always finished first.
Yes.
And now I'm trying to organise things so that what I do serves several purposes. So I work on stuff for a workshop that I can roll out over 3, 4 or 5 different occasions, because I cannot be doing new stuff all the time.
Yes.
There are not enough hours in a day. And I also need, and I mean need, to fit in periods of playtime. I give myself a week or more if I can.
Right.
Because when I indulge in my playtime, when we go to shows and you buy stuff online and you get this new toy and that new toy and they're always there, and you think, yeah, I'm going to do something with that. I'm going to do something with that. And these periods of playtime are when I do use that and get it out and play with it and see what I can do with it. It doesn't always work first time, but it's really stupid to spend money buying things if you ain't going to use them.
Well, never a true word was spoken, yes, and I think we're all guilty of that. And I mean, I don't really go to many shows, there's not many near me, but I do go to the Harrogate Knitting and Stitching show. That's probably the main one I go to. And things I need, I know I've got projects coming up, I might need a few bits and pieces. So, but I have kind of tried to move away from the buying stuff just for the sake of it. But I do have the dye kits is something that I've got quite a few different sorts of dye. Must get some time and have a play. But yeah, you do have to kind of schedule it in, don't you? To do it and get those things out and do that. And I occasionally, when I've got a 13 now, a 13-year-old, and I'm a single mum, so Ryan actually loves arty things anyway. So I'm sure the next time I think, I'll get this dyeing thing out and have a try with the dyeing. I'm sure he'd be in there as well, dying to have a go as well, and kind of fabric paints and stuff. He likes just messing around with paints and creativity. So yeah,
but it's how children get started.
It is.
It's not just a case of dragging him in because you're doing it. No. You're actually doing him a favour, because giving a kid something like that to get them going when they're younger means that when they get older, chances are they will still have an interest and an inclination to actually do something
He's
rather
very
than looking at
creative
a
on that.
screen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But he loves junk modelling. You know, he'll collect. He's got a whole box in his room full of old cartons and tubs and stuff. He just loves making things with things like that. You know, it's quite and he really loves it. Mum, can we make something together? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So he loves that. Yeah, so we've got off the point of your planning, but yeah, the creative time I think is very, very important, and it's good that you actively schedule in creative time.
I have to.
Yeah. Go nuts otherwise, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So you're looking into your future plans and planning all your projects and so on. So have you got plans and projects that you want to share with us today, Chris? What you kind of coming up over the next however long?
Well, I'm really stuck into my medieval theme, and we're going to France for a couple of months next year, so that I can do some research. And I've been speaking to people at shows because some people are more au fait with quilting than I am. And I've picked up quite a few tips, and somebody said, you need to get this book, or you need to get that book, or you need to have a go at this, so that I can work the way that I want to work and see how I can get this stuff. It's a theme that I've used before, and I've sort of called it stitched in stone, because it starts in stone and then it ends in stitch. I know it's the thing's the other way around, but I want to get it off the wall and into fabric somehow.
Yes.
I will use mixed media as well, because I'm fiddle diddling in all sorts of stuff most of the time. And I need to have stuff on the go, so that when we go away in the caravan, I can't take my workroom because the caravan just isn't big enough. So it has to go in a basket or a box that goes underneath the seat.
Yes.
But I have to have stuff to do while I'm away.
Yeah.
And if I can get into a theme and a way of working it, then I can take the correct stuff that I need to have, and I can actually do it while I'm away.
Yes.
I can't afford to take 2 months off.
No, that's a really lovely way of doing it, though, taking things with you. So it's like a working holiday, break. It's a change of scene as well to kind of stimulate that creativity, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Sounds absolutely wonderful. So whereabouts in France are you going?
We're going to start off by so I can have a look at the tapestry.
Oh, that's wonderful, yes.
Then we are going down to Chinon, because the thing that I'm actually researching at the moment is the journey of someone who took the route, the Chemin de Saint-Jacques, and from Tours down to Santiago. We're not going as far as that, but I want to go from Tours probably down to, I don't know, Moissac or Toulouse, somewhere around there, and specifically in the Poitou and the Charente, where I need to be doing some research. So we'll have probably a week at Bayeux, a week at Chinon, and then a couple of weeks somewhere else, and maybe a couple of weeks somewhere else. We basically become a pair of gypsies.
Yes.
When we got the caravan on the back, we go, and because he doesn't have to come back to go back to year 9, we can stay as long as we want to.
Brilliant. And France is really nice for travelling around like that as well. So
it is
lovely. A nice break and doing your textiles as well. Brilliant.
Yes.
Well, I think that leads into then, Chris, to we've got to 40 minutes. I say this every week. How have we managed that? But thank you so much, Chris. It's been absolutely brilliant sharing a very small part of your stitchery story with us today. It's been absolutely fascinating finding out about some of the things that you're working on, and the beakheads and the B&Q and all the things that you've shared with us today have been absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure as you will keep on inspiring people to have a go and look at the different side of things possibly in your creativity. So yeah, that's really great. And for our listeners to find out more about you, we've talked about your blog and you've got your website as well. So we've got those links in there. Any other kind of places on social media we can hound you?
Well, I've got a Facebook page, and on my blog, on the right-hand side, there's a clicky link,
Yeah.
It says my Facebook page.
Well,
And if you just click on there and it goes to my Facebook page, and whenever I do a blog post, I always post a link
brilliant.
on the Facebook so that the two interact together.
Yeah.
But I'm utterly useless with regards to Twitter and Instagram, and I found I was spending far too much time faffing around on the computer. So I cut it down so that I only am in certain places, and I spend half an hour dealing with those, and then I actually go and get some work done.
Yes, I think that's a good way to. We can't be everywhere at once, although we do try. So that's really good. But I have to say, I am enjoying Instagram a great deal, and I will be sharing your images on there.
That's fine.
Because the Stitchery Stories has got its own Instagram account. So if anybody wants to follow us on there, you're more than welcome. So overall, that is absolutely brilliant, Chris. I've really, really enjoyed speaking to us. Please go and find Chris. I'm sure she'll be popping up at various other exhibitions and workshops and all the rest of it as well. So it's been fantastic. Really lovely listening to you today, Chris. And I wish you all the best with your hunt for beakheads. And you've got me started now. I'll be thinking, right, where in Yorkshire can I go and find some?
You have plenty.
I know, you'll have to send me a list. I'll have to go and find them myself now, won't I?
You will indeed.
That's been absolutely brilliant, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you liked this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and offers from our lovely guests. Please visit stitcherystories.com to join the fan club. Of course, if you have iTunes, then subscribe there to automatically get new episodes, and why not leave us a review and rating whilst you are there. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. So keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery stories.